Hey everybody, it's Dwayne from GitKraken, developer evangelist here. I'm here with one of our ambassador and community members, Holger Flick. Holger, why don't you go ahead and give us a little introduction about yourself?
Hi, Dwayne. Thank you for the invite. I'm a recently new ambassador to GitKraken, and I've also not been using GitKraken for this long. So the reason why you invited me was actually some of the first impressions I had at the beginning of the year and how it made an immediate impact on me as a software developer. And that's what I do. I develop software, have been doing so for over 30 years now, I would say. And my main focus is the Delphi programming language, where I'm also an MVP. So I put tutorials, trainings, all that sort of stuff out there for programming languages. And with regards to background, I have a degree in computer science and a PhD in engineering. So that is mostly the project background I have, pretty technical stuff.
One question I always like to ask everybody is, what's your story with version control? How did you first encounter version control, and was it Git? If not, how did you move from where you were to using Git?
Yeah, actually, at first it was like Star Team from Ballin. Not a lot of people know it. Even I have used it with one project. It was proprietary. It was not easy to set up. It was one of those versioning systems that had a database plus a server plus a client plus a licensing server. So it was like really, really complicated to set up. And then during college, I worked with CVS. And that was the first time I really, really got to know version control and all the dangers of version control. One group actually lost all their progress from 3 weeks with a wrong merge. And that was possible with CVS. You could literally eliminate stuff in the version history if you weren't careful. And then SVN, Subversion, and from Subversion, I made the jump to Git, primarily because Git is integrated now into Xcode, into Red Studio, and also into Visual Studio Code. So all the major IDEs or text editors have versioning control. And that's why I looked at Git, GitHub. And the only thing is, if you use Git, the terminal is a little bit complicated at first. And the reason I got into GitKraken was the great view of the history of all the projects. So you can immediately see with one view how the merges happen, who did what, especially, and even as a single developer, that is very, very helpful.
So what would you say are your favorite parts about the GitKraken client?
Number one really is the ability to use, you call it the CLI view, the terminal view with the history. So I have the best of both worlds. I can just use the mouse, to do my versioning, and or alternatively, I have all the terminal commands in the same window. So I love that. That is absolutely perfect. And then the view of the merging, branching, that is unbeatable, because with one look, you immediately see what is going on in your project and also what other people did while you were asleep or whatever, because then everything gets an offset. And it's the details really, but that's what it is with every tool. You don't see it at first. Like you might see like, I don't see that much here, but the power is in the details. Like you see little numbers next to the branches, and then you immediately know how many commits you're behind or in front of a certain branch. I would say if you give GitKraken a week, after a week, you will definitely notice like these tiny little tidbits that make it so useful for you.
Aside from GitKraken, which thank you very much for being a GitKraken ambassador, what are some other things you're passionate about out there in the tech space right now?
So Delphi, that's my programming language. I'm also an MVP in that area, and I have it's most of it is free. I collaborate with a big third-party developer in that sphere, and I look at their components control, because for people that don't know, Delphi is pretty much component based. So if you build a Windows desktop application, you see the form in front of you, and you can drop components, be it text, be it edit fields. And in the third party sphere, you get stuff like a big chart And the only thing is you supply the data for these charts, and everything is happening with the rapid application development model. They want to call it low code now. For me, it's still rapid application development. And that's where my passion is. I have a series, How It Works with Holger, that looks at tiny little things inside of Delphi or programming in general. And I have also written several books for Delphi developers, which are all hands-on. This is what you'll see from me if you monitor my feeds. Everything is hands-on. I always need a use case, and then I'll try to solve that a problem or show you something how you can approach future issues.
Excellent. Curious your advice then to other Delphi developers out there. Is there anything you have learned recently that you think would be helpful, like, with regards to Git, with version control, or just anything in the Delphi realm?
Yeah, that's actually something I'm passionate about. Is I started introducing version control into my trainings and tutorials to slowly introduce Delphi developers to version control, because I would say the great majority still uses zip version control, as I refer to it. So when they start working, they zip up the folder with all their source and put a date into the file name, and then they start working. And at the end of the day, they do another zip archive with the date. And they back all that up. So I try to introduce versioning into Delphi during my trainings, and I usually show the GitKraken view, and I say, hey, now in the training, I start with this tag or this branch. And if you want to follow me, this is the point where I need to go to. And then they can follow my training. And in the end, I can say, hey, if it doesn't work, jump now to this branch or this tag, and this is what the source code should look like. So it helps me to make my trainings easier to follow. That's my plan, also to do that in the public sphere too. I offer my source code on GitHub already, so it only makes sense to feature GitKraken in future tutorials.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. A couple last questions here as we're wrapping up. Do you have any specific advice for someone getting started with GitKraken Client, or maybe someone just new to Git in general?
Try not to just read about it. Also, try to communicate with people on the Slack chat, because GitKraken has a great Slack chat, for example. So I think it is really important not just to read about it, but also communicate with other people with concrete examples that help you solve them. And it has to be said, as with programming, like for example, Delphi programming, you can't do it with object-oriented programming. And GitKraken, you need some kind of basic foundation about Git, I would say. So there's great Git primers out there, like Learn Git in a day, or the most important things about Git. And I'm quite sure GitKraken has some introductory text about that. If you've already used version control with other versioning systems, I can only say it's going to be so much easier, because with Git, you can't mess up. There's always a way back. There's like, it makes it much easier, you know? And I forgot to mention one thing, like GitKraken works with not only with GitHub, but also with the self-hosted solutions that are out there. And that's what I'm using. So as a one-man show like me, like as a single developer, you can literally use your NAS, set up a server, and then use GitKraken with that for your own version control, and give other people access to the web interface. So you don't have to use GitHub or GitLab or any of those if you're concerned about your intellectual property. Works fine with GitKraken.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, actually, we do have an entire section. If you go to gitkraken.com, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a Learn menu. You can explore that and get as deep as you want to get. It goes from branching to rebase. There's a lot of topics covered there. And we're always trying to make more helpful materials for folks. All right, well, wrapping things up here, do you have any parting shots, anything you want to plug? Where can we follow you online?
So my webpage is flixengineering.com. It's a little bit complicated. My Twitter handle might be easier. That's hflickster. So HFLICKSTER, hflickster. You're welcome. Thank you so much for the invite.